Und jetzt, als wir auf Meisel schon gesagt, beten wir mit Kusche und Zivil, sollen sich aufstellen, in der Barriere machen nach Birches Gomel. Der Rabbi wie Kalam, wir Moshe zu keinem Jahr lieb.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hagomel lechayovim toivos shegomlani kol toiv. Noide lecho unesaper teilosecho. I say it every day, 3 times a day. But the question is, will I mean it? If I'm ready to stand over here and say it in front of everybody else. I can say Noide lecho unesaper teilosecho, but if I'm not ready to stand over here in front of everybody, do I really mean it? Moirai v'Rabosai, I'm a simple man with a family and 2 kids. 2 years ago, living my normal life, we found out my wife is not feeling good. We went to a doctor in Toronto, and he's told us, your wife has a brain tumor. Imagine for 1 second what that means. Your wife has a brain tumor. We went to doctors in Toronto. We try to get the best doctors around over there. We speak to them, and they look at us and they say, we're very sorry. You have to wait 3 months. It's a socialized country. We only get the operating room a certain amount of time a week, and we cannot operate for a few months. We were collecting a little bit of money to try to put down to maybe buy a house. And when we found out this needs to be done, we went in there, and everything and every single penny that we had went into this. There's a famous thing that says, Beisoy zu ishtoi. Well, let me tell you, Beisoy zu ishtoi. And in my situation, that's exactly what happened. I was left penniless. What happened next was like this. We came, Baruch Hashem, back, and we began to build. Everything was okay with my wife. She did not have cancer. It was just a brain tumor. Not a year went by, and I went to the doctor with some pain, and he looked at me, and he said, words I never thought I'd ever hear. You have cancer. I want you to imagine what that word meant to me. Cancer, almost death, could be death. You'll be dealing with the rest of your life, Chaz v'Sholem. My whole life flashed in front of me at that moment. And I said to myself, what am I going to do now? Immediately, I called my father. I spoke to him. He got on the plane and he came over to be next to me. We spoke to a number of different askonim, and again, I needed to go over and find the best doctor, which happened to be in Indianapolis, Dr. Einhorn. I don't want to get into details. I could speak for 2 hours over here. I just want to make a couple of quick points to understand. I'm not here for the COVID. I'm here simply to say that people in this room made it possible for me to be in a situation when I was able to walk in to Dr. Einhorn and to know that Dr. Foster would be able to give me the best shliach that he could be so I can get the best surgery that I can do. I started my chemotherapy and we thought everything would go smooth. It did not happen. I had tremendous pain, unbelievable pain. But that didn't really matter so much. I just wanted to survive. 2 weeks later, we went in for another chemotherapy round. And if you know what chemotherapy is, it kills every cell, every good, fast-growing cell in your body. I needed every ounce in my body to be able to fight it. I had communities and people davening for me and calling me. And you don't know what it means to get a phone call in the middle of chemotherapy from somebody who cares about you. A chaver in Toronto, a friend in Eretz Yisrael who I haven't spoken to in 10 years, a chavusta in Eretz Yisrael. I run into a situation where I couldn't walk. I was tremendously sick. I walked into the hospital and the Dr. Einhorn immediately said, you have a very serious case of typhlitis, which means, again, you have no white blood cells, so you can't fight any disease, and you have to go into seclusion. It was Friday night, 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm sitting over there, and my wife is sitting next to me. No cell phones, nothing. I'm sitting over there. The doctor walks in and asks to speak to my wife for a minute. This is what he told her. Your husband has perforated his bowel. He probably will not make it through the night. He has 3 hours to live. My wife was faced with a situation like this. Was tut man? What am I going to do? Am I going to tell my husband over here that he doesn't have 3 hours to live? Or am I going to just let him have morphine so he can just kind of go and then, what should I do? And she thought to herself, what I'm going to do is what I want to be done for me. I want him, like I would want to know if something like this would happen. I want him to know. He probably would want to know. Moira Rabbi says she walked into the room at 3 o'clock in the morning on Friday night. She looked me in the eyes, and I knew what she was about to say. She told me, Uri, the doctor just told me that the worst that we were nervous about all these weeks was going to happen, happened. You have perforated your bowel. You're going to go to, they call all the doctors and the surgeons. You're going to emergency surgery within the hour. I'm sorry to tell you this, but this is what it is. Time froze in my mind. And I looked at her and I said, for all these years, my father sits by the table, the Shabbos table, and tells us, and Sichas Musar, and everything that you can imagine, I'll be sure and all this in this situation, and everything. Did it go in? This is the time, and this is the place we have to believe, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu, if it's my time, then it's my time. But if it's not, I'm going to get up, and no doctor's going to tell me how long I'm going to live, and what's going to happen. If I'm meant to go, I'm meant to go. But if not, I'm going to get up and I'm going to walk out of this hospital. Immediately she was shooken up and she said, okay, let's do it. What do we need to do? So we davened together a little bit. We said some Tehillim. And she was called out from the room again to find out what is it that we need to do right now. I was sitting alone in the room, secluded. In the middle of the night, on Friday night, I couldn't call my father, I couldn't call Rabbonim, I couldn't call anybody. It was just me. I suddenly heard a noise, which I was not hearing before. And it got loud, and it got louder, and it got louder. And I was looking around behind me and I said, what is this? What's going on? It got louder, and I realized that it was the clock on the wall. Tick, tack, tick, tack. And I remember saying to myself, why am I hearing the clock right now? I'm sitting here for 2 days, I haven't heard the clock. I'm hearing the clock now? And I remember looking at the clock and saying to myself, how many more ticks do I have left? 100, 200, 300, 500? What am I going to do with this? I can promise you one thing at that time. I did not think, what a nice car I drive. I certainly did not think how much money I have in the bank. I did not think if I have a house, how many diamonds, how big was the diamond that I got my wife. At that moment, the one thing that I was thinking about, or should I say the two things that I was thinking about, is what's going to be with my family. What did I accomplish in this world? Did I do what I wanted to do? Or was I just here, and I was here, and then I won't be? I remember thinking to myself, at that time, Baruch Hashem, with the help of the RCCS, I was able to not have to think at that time about financials. Imagine to yourself that I had to think about financial. How am I going to do this? Do I need another MRI, another CT? Do I need something else? Do we have the money for it? The tremendous pressure at that moment alone to think about what's going to be with your life, what's going to be with your kids, what's going to be with your wife, how much money and how many bills am I going to incur at that moment for my wife will be left with, was not there. Imagine for one moment what you would feel like. It's priceless. It's undescribable. There's a lot to say, and there's a lot I can talk about. But I can say, Baruch Hashem, at that moment, we somehow got a way of not doing emergency surgery. I partially looked at the doctors with my wife and I said, we don't need to operate right now, let's wait. They said, but you may die. I said, put me on intensive care, put me on the wires, what's going to happen if I die? He says, your blood pressure is going to start going down, your heartbeat will slow down. I said, so what's the rush? If there's a 90% chance that I'm going to die, so let me stick around. Maybe there'll be a nest, maybe something will happen. They called right away my father and his soul, which flew over to Indianapolis, Indiana, thinking on the plane the entire ride, I'm going to have to bring over my son back to Eretz Yisrael. Imagine for one second what my father may have gone through at that moment. But Baruch Hashem, I was able to pull through it, and I was able to somehow Nisim, which is a whole different story we have to talk about some other time, or I'll just write it down. But we had Nisim at that time, and I was able to get out alive, and then have 4 weeks later a very complicated surgery where Baruch Hashem it was successful, and I'm standing in front of you today. I'd like to thank the RCCS for mamish keeping me alive. Cancer does not discriminate. It can happen to Chas v'Shalom any person and any time. And the idea, someone asked me, how does it feel to be a survivor? To be a survivor, what does that mean to be a survivor? You either survive or you don't survive. Survivor is no chachma. The chachma is to come out from the situation and to elevate yourself, to do something different. To be able to thrive from the situation. So if you need to call me something, call me a thriver. The RCCS Rofeh Cholim Cancer Society allowed me to thrive through this situation and to become a different person. To become not the family that I was just going on with life, but to be able to take it on to the next level, to be able to convey more serious eating the Torah, to be able to do what I can to help anybody else who Chas v'Shalom has to go through this. The Valatanya says, if you give a little bit more than what you have, that's how Israel are going to be nigal. I'm accountable on myself to do whatever I can to help anybody who ever goes through the similar situation. The Shekoyach and Kol Tuv and HaKadosh Baruch Hu give us Refuah Shleima L'Chol HaCholim.